on Jonah. So what was last week? What happened last week to Jonah?
Swallowed by a whale.
He got swallowed by a whale. After God told him to do what?
Go to Nineveh.
Go to Nineveh. Go to Nineveh. Right? And Jonah didn't really want to go to Nineveh because
They were bad.
no, more than that. More than bad people, more than avoiding people.
They were Assyrians.
They were Assyrians.
And they might kill him.
They might kill him, sure, but they more specifically did what?
Killed his
Well, not really.
Every single one of them. No, they killed a bunch of Israelites, right? The Assyrians took Israel into captivity, I think twice. The Assyrians were known for being very wicked. I mean, we have accounts of them. They would actually skin people alive and let them run to the next city. They would take them and they would stick them up around the edge of the city and stuff. And they were just very, very wicked. They enjoyed torturing people. Right? So God says, Jonah, I need you to go save the city because they're wicked. Jonah's like, you're telling me. And what did he do? He headed where?
Tarshish.
Syria. Tarshish. Tarshish. You're in Tarshish, which is literally as far in the opposite direction as you can go. Alright, so like I said, this week we're going to kind of talk a little bit about the background of Jonah, because this chapter is real short. There's just not a lot there. There's many different ways people view Jonah. What do you think those ways are? That they view the story of Jonah as literature. What kind of literature?
Historical.
Story. Historical is one. Another one starts with an A. A-L?
Allegory.
Allegory.
Yeah.
Right. What's an
That's
allegory?
CJ.
What's an allegory?
It stands for the story, a long narrative that stands for something other than itself.
Right. And typically allegories are not what?
Long. I mean, short.
Real?
Real.
Oh.
Real words we're looking for there. Real. Typically allegories are made up stories that prove a point. So there's some people who view it as allegorical. There's another one, some people who view it as starts with a P. P-O?
Poem.
Positive.
Poem?
Yeah, poem. They view it as poetry, right? They say it's just meant to be this kind of this lighthearted thing. Most of it's not really true. The idea is it just flows really well. That's how some people view it. Right? So the book of Jonah is viewed as a lot of things, and many of them come back to the fact that many people believe it's not what?
Real.
Real. Almost all the different ways they come back to it is saying, you know what? That's a great story. You can learn a lot from that. God obviously taught him a lot. They believe Jonah was probably a real person, but they don't really believe he was eaten by a whale. They're saying, but you know, you can learn a lot from that. Right? What do you guys think? Do you think it's real or not?
It's in the Bible, so I'm going to go with yes.
It's probably real. Alright, Matthew 24, you don't have to look it up, or 12:40. Yeah, Matthew 12:40 says this, for just as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the great fish, so will the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. Jesus views the story as what? Historical, which means he views it as it really happened. Right? Because we know Jesus, did Jesus really spend time in the tomb? Was Jesus really killed in the belly of the earth? Right? You typically compare things of equal value, right? Does that make sense? And so he's comparing something that's really going to happen with a story that he seems to believe really did happen. And so here we have it. Alright, and so the middle schoolers have this question. And silly me, I did not have an answer for it last week. I don't know why I didn't.
Silly you.
Silly me. You would have thought I would have known that would have been a question. So what was Jonah swallowed by? There's kind of a couple theories. The first theory I heard was this, that it may have been a sperm whale.
Whoa.
They don't typically chew their food, so it's an ideal candidate right off the bat. Somebody was asking last week about killer whales. Said it's like, you know, yeah. It's like, have you ever seen? Right. We'll start simply with that. It doesn't live there. Secondly, they kind of chew their food, and thirdly, they have little mouths.
And they kill their
We're getting there.
They kill great whites.
Yeah, they do. They kill great whites. I mean, they just kill everything. But they apparently have found one of these dead one time and opened it up to see what was in the stomach.
That's gross.
And they found a 40-foot long giant squid that weighed over 400 pounds, and it had not been chewed or anything. They basically just swallowed it. So, if it could swallow a 40-foot long, 400-pound squid, there's a really good chance it could swallow Jonah. Right? It's not outside the realm of possibilities. The other beautiful thing is this. The burden of proof is not really on us. You know what that means? You guys understand what that means?
We don't have to identify it as an exact kind.
Right.
It's just a whale.
Right. Well, it says fish, which is more generic than that. Yes.
Why do people like?
What?
Why do people always like when they read this story? Why do they always assume it was a whale? Because that's the biggest like fish that would be able to swallow something.
Probably. It sounds better. I mean, it looks better than a picture of a whale than it does big fish.
I mean,
It's not a whale.
A megalodon.
Yeah.
what's
But it would probably
my Bible
shut
says a
down.
shield. What's a shield in English?
Hell.
No, we'll talk about that. We'll get to that. Right? So we don't really know what it was. The other assumption is this. Apparently there's a big book written on this trying to scientifically prove Jonah. You know, you guys can look that up and find it if you would like. But the other prevailing theory is this, that something like this ate him.
What is that?
This, can't see it. It is basically, the word is a keto or something like that. It's Greek. And the Bible kind of references it in Job. There's also about 15 to 20 extra biblical references through the Greek and other literature that references this big beast that lived in the Mediterranean Sea. It's apparently extinct. We haven't seen it since. It's got to be. But the historical references to it paint it as definitely big enough to do this.
That looks like it would chew something up.
Yeah. So you guys can take that for what it's worth, but that apparently is one of the prevailing theories of what actually swallowed it. But like I said, there's about 15 to 20 references, extra biblical, that reference this thing and people who saw this thing and fishers who encountered this thing. So the theory is maybe that. But like I said, the other theory is it was a sperm whale. And I think I heard once Goliath grouper. I don't know for sure.
They do, but
You'd be a little quick.
One did swallow a guy though.
What? Goliath
The
grouper?
Goliath grouper did? Yeah.
Like, is it a whale or
Yeah.
something?
It's a big
it's a
fish.
giant group.
A giant fish.
I thought they were the ones that were.
There's one at the Fort Fisher Aquarium if you go look at it.
They get huge.
He's not as big as they get.
They
Yeah,
get huge. And the other thing is this, fish typically, if you watch videos of fish, typically swallow stuff whole. I mean, there's fish that swallow stuff about their same size whole. They can that's what they do. So, but like I said, the burden of proof isn't on us, which basically means I don't have to dig around and find a fish that could swallow Jonah, or did swallow Jonah, or find a historical reference to a fish that swallowed a man and he survived, right? The burden of proof is on who? My God.
That's ugly.
Whoever wants to challenge it, right? The burden of proof is on somebody who says, you know what, basically what they have to say is, you know what, there's no fish in the entire ocean that could have swallowed Jonah, right? And that's not accurate, because we know of at least one, and there's a lot of fish that probably could have, but we know, the sperm whale that would have gone within its nature to do that, to swallow whole, and be able to suffice. Does that make sense? So, in case you were wondering that, the middle schoolers will get a good kick out of that. It's going to be fun. All right, so Jonah chapter 2. Chapter 2. Yep, somebody want to read it for me?
I'll do it, I don't mind.
Go for it.
Unless someone else wants to. Okay. Then Jonah prayed to the Lord his God from the belly of the fish, saying, I called out to the Lord out of my distress, and he answered me. Out of the belly of Sheol I cried, and you heard my voice. For you cast me into the deep, into the heart of the seas, and the floods surrounded me. All your waves and your billows passed over me. Then I said, I am driven away from your sight, yet I shall again look upon your holy temple. The waters closed in over me. To take my life, the deep surrounded me. Weeds were wrapped around my head at the roots of the mountains. I went down to the land whose bars closed upon me forever. Yet you brought up my life from the pit. O Lord my God, when my life was fainting away, I remembered the Lord, and my prayer came to you, into your holy temple. Those who pay regard to vain idols, forsake their hope of steadfast love. But I, with the voice of thanksgiving, will sacrifice to you what I have vowed I will pay. Salvation belongs to the Lord. And the Lord spoke to the fish, and it vomited Jonah out on the pond to dry land.
Dry land. All right, here's a question. Is this the first time in the Bible we see Jonah? No. You know where we see Jonah? We see Jonah, happy you asked, in 2 Kings 14:25. He restored the border of Israel from Lebo-Hamath as far as the Sea of Edrei, according to the word of the Lord, the God of Israel, which was spoke by his servant Jonah, the son of Amittai, the prophet who was from Gath-Hepher. Right? Now there's some people who think that Jonah wasn't a good guy, because what we see following this is Jonah says, he prophesies that Israel is going to take, I can't remember what king it was, I should look that up, but that Israel's going to take back their land, they're going to take back what was stolen from them, and they do. And they succeed. It says right here, they got back the land that they were promised. And then, what happened was essentially the Assyrians, I think, came back and took it back. Because the king became very prideful. And it says literally right after this that he decided that he was the best, and that he was the greatest, and that he was the one who accomplished all this stuff. And God said, you know what, we're going to go ahead and put it into that. And he took it back. And so some people see Jonah as maybe not a good prophet, saying things God didn't say. But I don't think you can get that out of this passage, because he actually said what happened. He came to him, he said, you're going to get back the land that you were promised, and God's going to bless you in this, and God did, and they got it. And then the king decided to go off his rocker. Right? So that's the first time we see Jonah. That's the first time we see Jonah. Alright, so what has happened here in Jonah chapter 2?
He's praying.
He's praying. From where? The inside of a fish.
The inside of something in the ocean.
That's right. He's praying from the inside of a fish. Here's something else that's interesting. What does the last verse in chapter 1 say? Verse 17 of chapter 1.
And the Lord appointed a great fish to swallow up Jonah, and Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights.
Jonah was in the belly of the fish for 3 days and 3 nights. And guess, after 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of this fish, what does Jonah decide it's time to do?
Pray.
He decides it's probably about time to pray. Right? Because what is he basically saying here? He's getting ready to do what?
God.
He's getting ready to die. That makes sense, right? Could you imagine being this nasty
That's a good question.
fish of a whale?
She asked, how does he know when it's day and night?
Unless the whale just came to the surface, and well, you still didn't see out of his throat.
He would have known, probably, how he wrote it down would have been inspired by the Holy Spirit to say, this is how long you read. But while he was in there, I highly doubt it.
And he probably asked them, like, what day?
That's true. What day is it?
You put little tick marks on the whale's belly.
So there's a couple theories. It could have been the Holy Spirit who told him, which probably happened, or simply that. He could have gotten out of the fish, told somebody, said, what day is it? And found out that he'd been in the belly of the fish for 3 days and 3 nights. Right? So he finally, after 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of this fish, he decides, you know what, it's time for me to pray to God and ask him for mercy. And he says, I cried out, I called to the Lord in my distress, he answered me, I cried for help from the belly of Sheol. What is Sheol?
Doesn't that mean hell?
Yeah, pretty much. It's actually more, from what I can find, there's a lot going around of what exactly that is. The best reference I think you'll probably come to is it's essentially death. Right? Because there are other words, I mean it could be Hades, it could be hell. One of the things I read said that they actually substitute Hades for Sheol.
You okay then? Okay.
And so what we see here is he cries out from what? He's getting ready to do what? He's getting ready to die. Now there are some people who believe that Jonah actually died and God brought him back to life. There's really nothing particularly wrong with that view. Right? It doesn't really affect your salvation at all. I don't tend to agree because I don't think that's what it says. Right? He says, I'm crying out, basically I'm dying. And then you see a bunch of words in here that basically sound like he's still alive, right? Well, obviously he's talking, for starters. Right, verse 7, as my life was fading away, I remembered Yahweh, my prayer came to you in your holy temple. Right? He's constantly referencing the fact that he is dying, that he is going to die, that he is now in the belly of this fish, and it is nasty, it's stinky, it's terrible, the weeds surround him and all of that, and he is dying in the belly of this whale, but it doesn't really say he is what? It doesn't say he's dead. But once again, if that's your view, it's okay. Ooh, that's still on there. Here's the other thing that's interesting. God never really told Jonah to go overboard.
I thought he fell overboard.
No, he was picked up and tossed because he told him that that's what needed to happen. But if you go back and read it, does God ever say, hey, Jonah, you need to go in the water for this to work?
No.
Yeah.
He's like,
No. What did we find out last week? He wanted to do what? He wanted to start to be, he wanted to die. He was done. He was ready to be done. And you see in chapters 3 and 4, he says that multiple times that he's ready to die. So I don't know if God did, but all I can tell you is it never says he did. That all of a sudden he's in the belly of this fish, he cries out to God and decides he doesn't want to die anymore, and God saves him, right? And God saves him. And then as soon as he's done praying, what happens?
He gets spit out.
He gets vomited onto dry land. He gets vomited on the dry land. So is there anything that kind of sticks out from this prayer in here? Anything? As you read it or as you looked at it, just kind of something that's odd. Cool.
I think it's cool that a whale can swallow a whole person.
Yeah.
Where's your boy?
What?
She's sick.
Bronchitis, man. That's fair.
Verse 9.
Verse 9?
Yeah. Swallowed by a whale, and I'm still thankful.
Right. As for me, I will sacrifice with the voice of thanksgiving. I will fulfill what I have vowed. Salvation is from the Lord. Even in the midst of the belly of this whale, what's he saying? God is still good. God is still salvation. God is still strength. Right? He's in this nasty. Could you imagine being in a fish? I don't even like the smell of fish. Could you imagine being in one?
With other fish?
With other fish? You know that fish ate over those 3 days.
Oh, yeah. There's some bugs joining them.
Right? Alright, so points of application. Like I said, this is kind of, there's not a lot here. It's a very short chapter. It's just basically crying out and saying, God, if you save me, I'm going to do what?
Do what you said.
Yeah, that's essentially it. God, if you save me, I promise I won't ever do this again. The first application is this: you're never beyond saving. Right? What had Jonah done up to this point? First off, he ran, right? He told God what?
No.
He said, no, I'm not going to do that. So he runs, and then he gets on the boat, and then what does he do?
Sleeps.
He sleeps on the boat, and then what does he do? He wakes up, and he says, guys, listen, if you kill me, this will all go away. And they toss him overboard. So Jonah is literally trying to do everything physically possible, first off, to die. He's not interested in living. Living is just not part of his game plan at this point. And then secondly, he's trying to do everything possible not to have to go do what? Go to Nineveh. He doesn't want to go to Nineveh. Right? So he's doing everything he can not to go to Nineveh. He's doing everything he can to die. And he's literally in the belly of this whale, fish, whatever it is, and he is dying, and then he decides what? After all of this, the first prayer in the entire book is what? Don't let me die. I changed my mind.
That's like the worst time. Exactly. Actually, never mind.
Just kidding.
Yeah, that's literally what happened. He's like, you know what? On second thought, this isn't awesome. I kind of want to live. And what's God do? God saves him. You are never beyond saving. You are never at a point in your life where you can't pray and cry out to God. You're never at a point in your life where God cannot save you. Even in the belly of a fish, even running from God, even trying to die, even trying to do all this stuff, doing everything he physically can not to have to do what God wants him to do, he still cries out to God, and God in his mercy, in abundance, decides to do what?
Save him.
Which is ironic, because that's exactly what he doesn't want to happen to who?
The Ninevites.
Ninevites. They're getting ready to cry out in their death and their distress, and God's going to save them, and he doesn't want that. He's not interested in that. But when it comes to him, he's perfectly okay with that. Right? The second application is this: pray early, pray often. Are we supposed to just pray when life's going bad?
No. Not that one. No.
You guys ever been there though?
Yep.
Your prayer life got to a point where you just kind of stop praying until life really gets kind of crummy?
Certainly stronger than things are bad.
You decided it was time. You think had he been praying and been investing and been praying to God that he would have been in this situation to begin with?
Probably not.
Probably not. Also, it's interesting that what happens right after he prays? Right after he prays, what happens?
Yes.
He gets saved. The fish pukes him up. Far too often we wait till life gets really, really bad before we start praying. Far too often we wait till everything's going south, until everything's falling apart before we decide, you know what, God, I think now I want you to be involved. And far too often we wait till we're almost dead, until life's going just south. And then we decide, God, I want to pray. And what we see all through our scriptures, God wants us to do what? Pray without ceasing, pray without ceasing. To pray all the time, to pray in everything, be thankful in everything. Because often when we pray, God does what? He answers, he listens, he pays attention. He wants to save him. He wants to save Jonah. But he waits till Jonah decides to humble himself and pray. He waits for Jonah to do that. He's not going to save Jonah before. And I'm fully 110% convinced that Jonah never prayed. What do you think would happen, Jonah?
He
He
did.
would have died in the belly of that fish.
He would have been in the Bible.
No, probably not. He would have died in the belly of the fish. So pray early, pray often. Pray before life gets so bad. Pray before you're dying. Pray before you get stuck in the belly of a fish for 3 days. God is willing and ready to save you and to redeem you, to take you out of that. But far too often we spend more of our time looking for advice from others and trying to pretend like God doesn't exist in those situations. Does all that make sense? Deal. All right.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Who wrote Jonah?
Jonah.
Jonah wrote this by himself?
That is the belief. We don't know 110% for sure, but Jonah wrote Jonah. Like we talked about it a little last week, it's ironic that Jonah got to spend his time writing down his worst failure.
Yeah.
And he said, called himself Jonah instead of I. Something else.
Right. The person. Yes, ma'am.
What did he eat?
You can survive for 3 days. I'll do that again.
Plenty of sushi.
And actually, fish is about one of the only things you can really eat without cooking.
That's
That's debatable. That's kind of gross. You don't eat
I'm
that.
It's not debatable, you can do
You
it.
can't eat fish without the Boy Scouts. They don't.
Oh.
you also eat fruit.
It's not about whether you want to.
I don't think fruit is huge abundance. It's not like a vegetarian version of like the
Guys,
city.
kebabs, oh no, grilled pineapple.
Grilled kebabs. Didn't have that either. But he either ate fish or he didn't eat it at all. You can survive for 3 days. And actually, you can survive 3 days without water.
It's also, it's not like God, like, was like, okay, whale or whatever you are, go eat this so he can have some rice or something. Like, go eat
Hopefully
this
as soon as
rice.
there's some schools of salmon or something, right?
Yeah,
I
maybe.
think,
Yeah.
I think the intention was for Jonah not to have a great time. He was probably very hungry and thirsty when he died. Well, he's asking him how many days he was in there.
Yeah.
What day is it?
Somebody please.
It'd be so weird.
What day is it? Okay, you're weird, bye.
Can you imagine seeing that?